So the next thing that we're going to set up within n8n is the AI agent. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail around AI agents in this video. I do have some other content that you can look through if you want to learn more about the agentic framework and AI agents in general. But essentially, this AI agent is going to be used to process incoming message and to generate a reasonable and relevant response based on the use case that I want to use this chatbot for. In this case, it's to give me recipe recommendations. So we just need to do some configuration here. We first need to just set up the user prompt that we're going to send to this AI agent. And we can select the text field that came from the message that I sent previously. And then we also want to make sure that the output gets structured in a certain way, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on this afterwards. But most importantly for now, we want to set the system message. This system message is going to give all of the rules, instructions, and the bounds for which this AI agent can work within. So if I just copy this from the GitHub repository and paste it in here, and let me explain a little bit about what's going on here. So the first block is the role. I tend to structure my prompts like this, and it generally works very well. So the first block is detailing the role that the AI agents should assume. So in this example, they are my recipe advisor. They need to give me good ideas for what I should make in the kitchen. I also give it an idea of what the tasks are that it is actually allowed to complete. So I've basically told it that it can do three things. It can generate ideas, it can give me step-by-step instructions, and it can also give me information about dietary considerations for these recipes. Structuring prompts like this is really useful, especially when you want to constrain your AI agent to just a specific set of things that it's allowed to do. I then detail how it should go about actually completing its work. So first of all, I want it to process my current and previous messages. I then want you to decide which of the tasks I'm actually asking for in those messages. If none of the tasks are relevant, remind me of what you're actually capable of doing. Once again, this helps with just keeping the AI agent on track. So if I ask a random question about politics, for example, the AI agent will know that that's outside of the scope of what it's allowed to do. And it will just remind me of what it is actually capable of doing. And then finally, create a text response to send back to me. The last section are the rules. And once again, these are really, really helpful in terms of keeping an AI agent on track. So just to outline a few of the rules here, you can only perform tasks within the tasks variable that I've defined. If I ask for something outside of this scope, remind me of what you can do. This is a good place to also define how you want the AI agent to respond. So for example, I want you to be very clear and concise. I also want you to use a funny tone of voice as if you're an old friend. You can choose whatever sort of tone of voice and style that you want. And then the last bullet point for the rules is one of the most important. We are going to be using a structured output parser, but having this block in the rules also really helps. Essentially, it's just telling the AI agent how it should output its response and kind of trying to enforce that as much as possible. And then the very last block, the data block, this essentially is where you can add any contextual data that the AI agent should be aware of. So for this example, I've just included today's date. And the reason why I've done this is because AI or LLMs don't have a concept of what today's date is. So for example, if I was to ask the AI agent, can you give me a recipe for chicken pie from the 1950s or from 50 years ago? The AI agent won't know what date 50 years ago was because it doesn't know what today's date is. But if you give it as context within the prompt, then it will have a grounding to know what today's date is and then to calculate dates based on today's date. So that's the reason for including that. Outside of that, that's everything that we need to do here for the AI agent for now. We obviously need to connect this up to a chat model. So we're going to be using Anthropic for this. I'm just going to use 3.5 Claude, which actually works very well generally for very simple kind of chatbot use cases. Now the memory is important. We are going to be adding memory to this chatbot. And the reason why this is important is because we want the chatbot to be able to recall messages that I have sent previously in the history. So for example, if I ask for a recipe and then it gives some recommendations and then I ask for instructions, but then let's say that I then refer back to a previous message. So then I say, okay, well actually, rather than a recipe for chicken pie, could you change the pie to a beef pie, but I want you to use the same crust recipe in that. So having that understanding of memory and allowing the chatbot to be able to essentially have a short-term memory to be able to recall information is really valuable and really adds to the user experience of a chatbot. In this example, the memory is just 5 messages, but you can increase this to as much as you want. the more you increase the memory, the higher the LLM cost will be, because the history of the messages will be passed to the LLM each time. And the last thing that we need to configure is the structured output parser. So once again, you can just use the template that I've provided in this example if you wish. But essentially, this is just going to be following a JSON schema that outputs the data in the desired format that we want, which is essentially just a JSON object with response as the key and a string as the value. Now, the reason that we use this structured output parser is because it makes things a little bit easier for the very last part of this workflow, which is then sending a message back to Telegram. It just makes things a little bit more predictable in terms of how we can actually pass the data to the Telegram API.